During a bachelorette party, I ended up in the arms of a stranger who whispered, "I'll never forget this night." I said, "This was a one-time mistake." He replied, "Then why did you kiss me goodbye?" My best friend asked, "Why do you seem so guilty?" I knew the truth would destroy everything if it ever came out. I never thought I'd be the type of person who would cheat. Not me. Not the girl who had been in a steady, loving relationship for 5 years. Not the girl who had spent months planning her dream wedding, picking out the perfect dress, writing vows that made even my best friend cry. And yet, here I was, sitting in my car outside my house at 7 in the morning, heart racing, stomach twisting, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. Mark was inside. Probably still sleeping. Probably curled up in bed, the same bed we shared, waiting for me to crawl in next to him and tell him about my night out. My stomach churned at the thought. I wasn't supposed to be here, sitting in my car, wearing the same dress from last night. I wasn't supposed to feel like my skin was burning from something I couldn't wash off. I wasn't supposed to have the taste of another man still lingering on my lips. It wasn't supposed to happen. I should have just gone back to the hotel after the club. I should have ignored the way his eyes locked onto mine across the room. I should have walked away when his hand brushed against my waist, should have said no when he leaned in and whispered something into my ear that I can't even remember now. But I didn't. And now, I had to live with it. It started with the bachelorette party. Monica planned the whole thing. "One last wild night before you're officially off the market," she had said, her eyes shining with excitement. "We're doing Vegas, right?" I hadn't wanted to go. I wasn't a party girl. I would have been happy with a nice dinner, maybe a spa day. But Monica wasn't the kind of friend who took no for an answer. She'd booked the suite at the Cosmopolitan, arranged a whole itinerary, dinner, drinks, VIP section at Omnia. "It's just a night of fun," she'd said. "Nothing crazy." At first, that's exactly what it was. Dinner was loud and full of laughter. We took shots, toasted to my last night of freedom, made stupid jokes about married life. Then we got to the club. And things blurred. The music was loud, pulsing, the kind that you could feel in your bones. The kind that made it easy to forget everything else, to lose yourself in the moment. I had more drinks than I should have. Monica kept handing them to me, and I kept taking them. Then he showed up. I don't even remember his name. I don't know if he told me. All I know is that he was tall, dark eyes, confident smile, the kind of guy who looked like he belonged in places like that. He was smooth, effortless, like he had done this 1,000 times before. He wasn't even my type. But none of that mattered. I wish I could say I don't know how it happened. That I was too drunk, that it was all a blur, that I blacked out and woke up in a stranger's bed with no memory of what had gone down. But I remember. I remember the way his hand felt on my back, the way he leaned in close and spoke in a low voice that sent a shiver down my spine. I remember the way I smiled at him, the way I let him pull me onto the dance floor, the way my body pressed against his like it was natural, like I hadn't spent the last 5 years sharing a bed with another man. I remember the exact moment I let it happen. He tilted my chin up, searched my face like he was waiting for permission. And I gave it to him. I leaned in first. I kissed him. And from there, it was over. It was like something took over me. The club turned into a cab. The cab turned into a hotel room. Not my hotel room. His. I let him close the door behind us. I let him press me against it, his hands skimming down my sides, his lips at my throat. I let it happen. I can't even say it was a mistake. A mistake is something you don't mean to do. I knew exactly what I was doing. And I did it anyway. It wasn't some drunken haze. It wasn't an accident. I wanted it in that moment. And now, I would give anything to take it back. When it was over, I felt sick. Lying there, tangled in sheets that weren't mine, next to a man I didn't love, all I wanted was to rewind time. To go back to before the first drink, before the first dance, before the first kiss. I sat up, covering myself, my hands shaking as I reached for my dress. "I have to go," I said. He propped himself up on one elbow, looking at me with a lazy, satisfied smirk. "I'll never forget this night," he murmured. My stomach turned. I shook my head. This was a one-time mistake. He just chuckled. "Then why did you kiss me goodbye?" I froze. I don't even remember doing it. Did I? I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my things and ran. Now, sitting outside my house, my whole body felt like it was made of lead. I couldn't go inside. I couldn't face Mark. I could already hear his voice, see the way his face would light up when I walked in. He would kiss me, ask if I had fun, tease me for looking exhausted. And I would have to stand there, knowing what I had done. Knowing that I had ruined everything. I thought about turning around. Driving somewhere else. Anywhere else. But then the front door opened. Mark stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his hair messy from sleep. His face broke into a sleepy smile. "There you are," he said, voice warm, full of love. "Come inside, baby." I made pancakes. I almost threw up. But I forced a smile. Forced my legs to move. Forced myself to walk inside. As if nothing had happened. I stepped inside, and the warmth of our home hit me like a slap. It smelled like coffee and maple syrup. The kind of morning that should have felt safe. The kind of morning where nothing bad ever happens. Mark was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, flipping pancakes. He looked at me over his shoulder and smiled, really smiled. The kind of smile that made my chest ache. "Long night?" he asked, setting the spatula down. I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. I felt disgusting. The dress clung to my skin, smelling like sweat, perfume, and him. I needed to shower. I needed to scrub every inch of myself until there was no trace of last night left. But Mark walked over and wrapped his arms around me before I could move. He buried his face in my neck, his lips brushing against my skin as he breathed me in. "Missed you," he murmured. I flinched. It was small, barely noticeable, but I knew he felt it. He pulled back, his brows knitting together. "You okay?" I forced myself to nod. Forced my lips to curl into something that almost resembled a smile. "Just tired." He studied me for a second, his blue eyes soft, full of love. He had no idea. No suspicion. And that made it worse. "Go shower," he said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "I'll bring you coffee." I managed to whisper, "Okay." Then I turned and walked straight to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The second the water hit my skin, I broke. Silent sobs racked my chest, my hands gripping the tiled walls like they were the only thing keeping me upright. I couldn't do this. I couldn't pretend. I had to tell him. He deserved the truth. I turned off the shower, wrapped myself in a towel, and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked the same. Same face. Same tired eyes. Same freckles on my nose. But I wasn't the same. And I never would be again. I took a deep breath, reaching for the doorknob, then my phone buzzed. I froze. It was a number I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have looked. Should have deleted it without reading it. But my hands moved on their own. Unknown number. "Hey, gorgeous. Thinking about you. Hope married life is treating you well." Winking face, my stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. No. No, no, no. I deleted the message. Blocked the number. Then I stared at my reflection again. My hands were shaking. I had to get a grip. I had to act normal. I walked out of the bathroom and into the bedroom, where Mark was sitting on the bed, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Feeling better?" he asked. I nodded, swallowing past the lump in my throat. "Yeah, much." He patted the space next to him. "Come here." I hesitated. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't want to be near him. Not because I didn't love him, but because I did. And I didn't deserve him anymore. I spent the rest of the day trying to pretend everything was fine. Mark didn't notice anything was off. Or maybe he did, but he chalked it up to exhaustion. I went through the motions, ate breakfast, laughed at his dumb jokes, kissed him goodbye when he left for work. And then, the second he was gone, I collapsed onto the couch, my heart racing. It was over. It had to be over. I had deleted the message. Blocked the number. I was in the clear. And then my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Unknown number? Blocking me? Cute. "You didn't seem so shy last night." I dropped the phone like it burned me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely breathe. I deleted the message. Blocked the second number. I felt sick. How many numbers did he have? How far would he go? That night, I tried to act normal. I curled up next to Mark on the couch, watched a movie, laughed at the right moments. I even let him pull me onto his lap, his lips brushing against my shoulder, his voice warm and familiar. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could move past this. Maybe I could pretend it never happened. Maybe I could still be the person he thought I was. Then Mark kissed the top of my head and murmured, "Oh, by the way, we're meeting some of my coworkers for drinks tomorrow. That new rooftop bar downtown. Sound good?" My heart stopped. Because I already knew which rooftop bar he was talking about. I had been there last night. With him. And if he was still in town, if he happened to be there, I forced a smile. "Yeah, sounds great." But inside, I was screaming. The next day, I walked into that rooftop bar feeling like I was walking straight into a trap. I had no choice. Mark was excited about the night, and I couldn't come up with a good enough excuse to skip it. He held my hand as we walked through the entrance, his fingers laced with mine, his thumb rubbing soft circles against my skin. It should have comforted me. But all I could think about was him. I told myself he wouldn't be here. That it was just another bar, just another night, just another mistake I had buried and left behind. But deep down, I knew better. Mark guided me toward a group near the back, his coworkers, familiar faces I had seen at office parties and work events. I smiled, greeted them, forced myself to act normal. And then, just as I let out a slow breath, Thinking I was safe, I saw him. Sitting at the bar. I felt the blood drain from my face. He wasn't alone. He was laughing with a group of guys, leaning against the counter like he owned the place. Like he belonged here. Like he wasn't the reason I had barely slept last night. His dark eyes flicked up, scanning the crowd lazily. Then he saw me. And he smiled. I nearly choked on my drink. I turned away fast, my fingers tightening around my glass, willing myself to breathe, to act like I hadn't just locked eyes with the one person who could destroy me. Everything okay? Mark asked, his voice light, oblivious. I forced a laugh, nodding too quickly. Yeah, just a little warm in here. Want me to get you some water? I nodded, desperate to get him away, even just for a second. The moment Mark stepped away, I felt him behind me. Close. Too close. His breath ghosted against my ear as he leaned in. You're even prettier when you're nervous, he murmured. My stomach flipped. I turned, heart hammering. What the hell are you doing here? I hissed. He just smirked, tilting his drink in my direction. I could ask you the same thing. My skin prickled. You planned this. He chuckled. Don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. I live here. You're the one who decided to walk into my bar. I swallowed hard. Relax, he said, taking a slow sip of his drink. Your fiancé doesn't have a clue. And he won't if you play nice. My blood turned cold. What do you want? I whispered. He leaned in again, voice smooth, amused. I want to see you again. I shook my head. No, absolutely not. Last night was a mistake. His smirk didn't fade. You keep saying that. But if it was just a mistake, why are you still thinking about it? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because he was right. I was thinking about it. About him. About how easy it had been to let go. About how, for just one night, I had felt like someone else, someone reckless, someone free. He saw the hesitation in my eyes. And he knew he had me. I'll be in town for a while, he said casually. Think about it. Then he walked away. And when Mark returned, pressing a cold glass of water into my hand, I was still frozen in place, my entire world unraveling. I should have ignored him. Should have never looked back. But the texts kept coming. They started subtle, little reminders that he was still around. Unknown number. Hope you're having a great day, gorgeous. Unknown number. Your fiancé's lucky. Wonder if he knows it. Then they got worse. Unknown number. Remember the way you moaned my name? Bet you do. I blocked every number. Deleted every message. But then, one night, Mark was sitting next to me on the couch, scrolling through his phone, when mine vibrated. A picture of me, in his hotel bed. Bare shoulders. Tangled sheets. Undeniable proof. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands clenched around my phone as I read the message attached. Unknown number. Tell me, sweetheart, what would Mark think if he saw this? My breath came in short, panicked bursts. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. I'm gonna take this call real quick. Mark barely looked up. Sure, babe. I walked fast. Straight to the bathroom. Locked the door. My fingers flew across the screen. Delete that. Now. Unknown number, I will. If you meet me. I squeezed my eyes shut. This wasn't happening. I wouldn't let it. But I had no choice. If Mark saw this, if he ever found out, everything would be over. So, I did the only thing I could. I agreed. I met him in a dimly lit hotel bar, away from the crowds, away from any place where someone could recognize me. He was already waiting when I walked in, leaning back in his chair, his smirk as easy as ever. Like this was some kind of game. I sat across from him, my hands clenched so tightly in my lap that my nails dug into my skin. Delete the picture, I said, my voice low, firm. He chuckled. Come on now. You didn't really think it'd be that easy, did you? I gritted my teeth. What do you want? His smirk faded slightly. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked onto mine. I want you to admit you don't regret it. I swallowed hard. I do. His jaw tightened. Liar. I forced myself to hold his gaze. You don't know me. He scoffed. I know the way you looked at me that night. I know the way you kissed me, like you didn't give a damn about anything else. You weren't pretending, sweetheart. You wanted me. Heat rose to my face, not from desire, but from anger. From the truth in his words. I had wanted him. But that didn't matter now. That night is over, I said, voice shaking. And whatever this is, it's not going to happen again. He studied me for a long moment, then sighed, shaking his head. Shame. I clenched my fists. Delete. The picture. He smirked, pulling out his phone, tapping the screen a few times. Done. I hesitated. That's it. He shrugged. I was hoping for something a little more fun, but you're a good girl, aren't you? His eyes flickered with something unreadable. Or at least you're trying to be. I didn't wait for another word. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and walked out. I thought it was over. I thought I had finally buried the truth. I was wrong. 2 days later, Mark and I were at a dinner party at Monica's place, surrounded by laughter and wine and the comforting illusion of a life that hadn't yet shattered. Then my phone buzzed. My stomach twisted as I glanced at the screen. Another unknown number. And another picture. Only this time, it wasn't sent just to me. I looked up. Monica was holding her phone, her face pale. Another friend, Rachel, had her screen tilted toward her husband, whispering. A cold chill ran through me. Mark was still laughing at a joke, unaware of the way the room was shifting, of the way people were beginning to exchange glances. I couldn't breathe. Then Monica cleared her throat, looking straight at me. You want to explain this? She asked, voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. Mark frowned, turning to me. Explain what? She turned her phone around. And there it was. The picture. Me in bed. Tangled sheets. My bare shoulders, my lips swollen from another man's kiss. I heard someone gasp. Mark's body went completely still beside me. Then he reached for my phone, his hand shaking. Tell me this is fake. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Tell me this isn't real, he said, voice cracking. Tears burned in my eyes. Mark, his face twisted. Oh my God. He shot up from his chair so fast it scraped against the floor. I reached for him. Please, let me explain. He let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Explain? You told me you loved me. You told me I was the only one. I choked on a sob. Don't, he said, his voice like a razor. Don't you dare stand there and tell me I was the only one while the entire room is looking at proof that I wasn't. The silence was suffocating. I glanced around, my so-called friends avoiding my eyes, their faces tight with judgment, disappointment. Monica shook her head. I knew something was off that night. I swallowed hard. Rachel whispered to her husband. God, she seemed so happy. How could she? The shame was unbearable. But nothing was worse than the way Mark was looking at me. Like he didn't know me anymore. Like I was nothing to him. Mark didn't go home that night. He didn't answer my calls. When I finally went to his place, our place, his things were gone. A note was left on the kitchen counter. I don't hate you, but I can't forgive you. Don't contact me. I sat on the floor, holding that note, my chest aching so badly I thought it might split open. I had destroyed everything. And for what? For a night I couldn't even take back? For a mistake I didn't even understand? Days passed. Then weeks. People stopped calling. Stopped inviting me out. Monica sent a single text. I love you, but I can't look at you right now. I didn't respond. I didn't deserve to. I used to think I knew who I was. I used to think I was a good person. Now I wasn't so sure. I hurt the only person who had ever truly loved me. I lost him. And the worst part? I still thought about that night. I still thought about him. Not with longing, but with anger. With regret. With the sinking, unbearable weight of knowing that he had won. He had ruined me. But I had let him. And I would have to live with that. Forever.